We've just hit a real dry spell on projects and parts and things like that, but I wanted to show you our newest one, and it's this little Opel GT race car. Now, out of all of our old drag cars and projects, this thing is the most realistic because it's pretty much functional as it is. It'll move under its own power, which is a huge upgrade compared to most of our junk. But this car, it's definitely got a little bit of age to it. It's definitely got some sketchy details. It needs some work here and there, but it'll crank up on its own. It'll take gear, it'll move, it's got brakes, but there's some things we need to address before we try to take it to the track. But overall, this thing is actually a pretty well-built car. It's got a tube chassis under it. It's got Mustang 2 front suspension with rack and pinion steering. Small block Chevrolet, I ran the numbers on it. It's a 327. It's got later model double hump heads on it. Big old cams, got plenty of compression. This thing hits a pretty good lick. Got a fiberglass front end that I'm not real sure what happened here as far as how this is mounted. It's kind of unusual because they left part of that flange and this is just kind of overlapped. It's not exactly how I would have done it, but that's, it's there, so we'll probably leave it like that. The doors are metal, but they've been gutted. Obviously Lexan windows have been added, and this thing has got to be pretty crazy light. So you can see that they've cut the quarter panels out here for these big tires. These are 1432 Phoenix tires, so 14 inches wide. That's probably a 14 or 15 inch wide wheel. But I like what they did here, even though it's kind of rough. You can see it's not a very smooth edge, because a lot of times these Opel GTs, they would come up here and do this big square looking wheel opening, and they just look goofy because these cars are so round, and they kind of remind you of like a 68 to 72 Corvette a little bit because of their body shape. They're just much smaller. So you'll notice they've already got Hot Rod Hoarder stickers on there. That's something that was put on there a couple years ago because this car belonged to our good friend Denny George, and he actually took this thing to the Pikeville Cruise-In. Pikeville, Tennessee had a cruise-in. Well, they still have the cruise-in every month. But a couple of years ago, they allowed for people to come do burnouts at the cruise-in. And obviously that got shut down because of safety reasons. But this car, Denny took it and did a big burnout in town with it. And when he did that, he put those Hot Rod Hoarder stickers on there. So I always appreciate all the advertising that he does for that. The things that need some work, let's take a look in here. The doors, you can see they're gutted. Little aluminum door panels. All the aluminum inside looks nice. Car's got a full roll cage in it, except for this door bar that's been taken out of there. You can see some issues here. This brake pedal is a little bit off center. The steering got some looseness to it. That needs to be fixed before we try to drive it. And then this is just a seat cover. It doesn't actually have a seat mounted in there. So there's a little bit of work to be done. But you can see the roll cage in here is probably a good thing that it's dark in this video, because the roll cage has got some, you know, not so great welds. I'm sure it worked very well for lots of years. But that's one thing I don't have, is the history on this car. I don't know anything about the history of it. You know, I'm assuming it ran here locally, like at Brainerd Drag Strip or Crossville, but I actually don't know that. I don't know the history. I'm hoping to find some of it. And about the only way you can do that on some of these cars is like the front end treatments. Some of them had holes, like this one's got little holes to go into the radiator. Some of them had the little headlights. Some of them had different treatments down here. Notice this one's got 6 holes down on the bottom side. So that helps you identify it. The rear wheel wells help you identify it. But we don't have a lot else to help us identify this car. But it's a really neat piece. It's got a lot of good parts on it. It's got a Mallory Unilight. Got the old Mallory box coil there. You know, it's got some old school stuff. But it's plenty modern enough to actually make something functional out of this car. So, you know, I think the paint would clean up pretty good. I know these wheels would clean up nice. We can make a very presentable car out of this without a whole lot of work. And it's even got, you know, the delay box and all kinds of fancy race car stuff. But I doubt we'll use anything fancy. This will just be a toy that we can take to the drag strip occasionally and go have some fun and do some burnouts with it. So one of these days we'll get it cleaned up, get it outside, get it some of these issues addressed on it, and at least go make a test pass down the highway. That's kind of our first step. But I like the little closeout panels for the tail lights. The little wing looks pretty good on here. These cars really need that little extra bit of downforce on the back. It's got charging lugs, master cutoff switch, and then I don't know if you can see under here. Nope, can't see under there. 9-inch forward coilovers. You know, just your basic 80s type rear suspension. But overall, this thing's got a pretty good look to it. It'll clean up good. It's going to be a neat little piece for us to tinker with, and it's just a little bit closer to the finish line than some of our other stuff. So I think it's going to be a good project for us to not take on something quite so drastic as some of our other junk, and just get out there and play a little bit. This thing does have a hood. It's sitting over there. You can see it's got a little scoop that's made on there. I'm thinking this might have been like a snorkel scoop, and they took the snorkel off of it and just made it like a cowl. Ain't scared. But it's a pretty neat piece. We're pretty happy with it. Denny George is cleaning out his shop over in Pikeville, and you know, he knows we love this stuff, and we've always talked to him about this car, and we were able to work out a deal to get this thing, and we're just happy to have another project and something that's a little more feasible than some of our really old stuff. So just a neat looking car. This thing's got a killer little stance. I mean, those back tires are perfect. You know, if we wanted to, we could clean up some of this stuff and give this thing a fresh coat of paint, but I doubt we're going to do that. This thing's got a pretty good look to it already. We might actually put a little smaller tire on the front. That thing is pretty close on the front end. But yeah, that's it. I just want to show it to you guys. Hopefully you like old drag cars like this, and it's kind of bridging the gap a little bit with what we normally do, because most of our stuff is so old. But this is a little more modern, a little bit easier to actually take to the track and use. So I look forward to being able to do that. Maybe next season, when the weather breaks, we'll be able to take this thing out somewhere and burn a little bit of rubber and have a little bit of fun.